Dr. Mohamed, a very good afternoon to you, sir. Dr. Mohamed, hello?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Mohamed. Right,
Sure.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met on Friday with the Jordanian King and Abu Dhabi Crown Prince, as well as Iraq's Prime Minister. Very important meeting witnessed an exchange of views on several international and regional, both political and economic situations. How do you see the meeting between the world leaders, Mr. Mohamed, Dr. Mohamed?
I mean, at this time, of course, the most important topic on the international agenda is the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And I think this, of course, has its ramifications on the region and on the bilateral and international relations. So I think it's important at this point in time for countries like Egypt and Gulf countries and Jordan to liaise and coordinate together regarding economic cooperation and ways of mitigating the impact of this conflict on their countries.
Indeed. Dr. Mohamed, how do you see cooperation between Arab nations, helping these countries in overcoming the challenges, as well as reducing the repercussions of the international situation with regards, as you mentioned, to the Ukrainian war?
Well, I think there's a lot of room to be exploited in terms of bilateral trade, for instance, investment. I mean, we have to be innovative here in terms of finding ways to offset the deficit that was caused because of, first of all, the agricultural products, very importantly, that countries like Egypt and to an extent also Jordan depend on from Eastern Europe and specifically from Ukraine and Russia in terms of grains, in terms of wheat, corn, a lot of agricultural products that play a role not only in producing bread, for instance, but also in the agrarian sector in general, in livestock and poultry production, meat production. All of these, I think, sectors need to find ways of finding alternative producers and sources. And I think in between them and also with other countries, regional and global, this can be done in coordination, at least to mitigate or reduce the impact.
Indeed. Right. Dr. Mohamed, also one of the most important challenges as a result of this war is the wheat situation, as Russia and Ukraine are the largest wheat exporters. What steps do you see Egypt having taken to overcome any possible challenges with regards to our wheat supplies, and how does collaboration with other Arab nations allow Egypt to further these steps?
Well, I think just like any kind of international crisis, you have short-term tools that you need to deploy to address the immediate impact, and then medium and long-term objectives. On the short term, I think we need to diversify, look for other producers in the international market. We have regions like in Africa, Latin America. Of course, the cost will be higher because of not only the cost of production, but also of transportation from these places. So this will be a costly affair on the short term. Medium and long term, of course, we need to encourage more producers, both within Egypt and maybe also at the regional level, neighboring countries, for instance. We need to work with them to encourage the production of wheat with a relatively low cost of transportation. I think this is very, very essential to happen. I think maybe one of the few, maybe on the long-term benefits of this crisis and between Russia and Ukraine is that it highlighted the importance of Egypt also diversifying its dependence or reliance on different countries. Historically, Egypt has been dealing with countries like Australia, like the U.S., but of course, again, the cost will be higher of getting wheat from these countries. So. On the long term, we need to definitely encourage more production of wheat within Egypt and in the region.
Yes, indeed. One final question, Doctor. Egypt, of course, is also affected with the issue of tourism by this Russian-Ukrainian war. How do you see the impact of this war on the movement of incoming tourists to Egypt, sir?
Well, it's massive, really, because we have regions in Egypt, like the Red Sea region, for instance, Sinai, again, reliant to a great extent on tourism from these countries. Only recently did Russia open up the travel again to Egypt after a period of boycott or lack of Russian tourists. So it's definitely very impactful. I think here there's a big role to be played by the state authorities, the Ministry of Tourism, for instance, in trying to attract alternative tourists from other countries. Again, this is a short-term solution, but it's very important to market also Egypt, not only as a destination for beach tourism, which again was mainly the target of Russian and Ukrainian tourists, but also it's important here again, or an important reminder again, that we need to also market the country more still as also a destination for monuments, for, you know, the biggest country in the world in terms of living or existing monuments today. So this is also a different kind of tourism, not necessarily right now the most, not the biggest tourist sector in Egypt, but I think, again, important to invest more and again attract more different groups of tourists from other countries for that purpose.
Indeed. I'd like to thank you very, very much. Dr. Mohamed Fahmy, Professor of International Relations. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and your insight. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break and we'll be right back to continue this edition of Cairo Local Time. Do stay tuned.